Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm back here again as I promised yesterday. So I'm very, very happy to be talking to you. We're talking about South Asia trade. My name is Sanjay Kathuria. I'm the lead economist for the Trade and Competitiveness Global Practice in the World Bank in the South Asia region. So we were going to talk about South Asia trade and why it's so low. But imagine that goods travel from New Delhi to Lahore, and instead of going by the direct route, which is they're contiguous, they're very close. They have to travel via the sea, via Karachi. So it takes 3 to 4 times the time, and the cost is so much higher. Similarly, if goods were to travel from Agartala in northeast India to Kolkata, they could cost as much as it could take actually 8 times more the distance it travels. Instead of traveling via Bangladesh, they travel via the chicken's neck of northeast India, and so it takes it costs 8 times. So the distance traveled actually is 8 times as much as if we were to travel directly. So that is one of the major reasons, among many others, but that's a key reason why South Asian trade is so low, intra-regional trade, much lower than in the comparator regions. If you look at Southeast Asia, it's 25%, not to mention Europe, of course, which is very high, which is 60%. And why are we bothered about this? Why are we bothered that South Asian trade is so low? Well, because I think there is a lot of underexploited potential. I mean, 5% intra-regional trade does not justify the economic heft that this region commands now. It is now the fastest growing region in the world, and therefore countries should be exploiting each other's growth and economic advantages, what we call comparative advantage. They should be trading a lot more with each other. So what we call a disconnected region in some sense, despite that proximity, what we call it's a burden. The proximity seems to have become a burden in South Asia instead of being an advantage, right? So, for example, and I mentioned, so if you're going from India to Pakistan, as I just mentioned, it's expensive, but it's actually cheaper for India to trade with distant Brazil than it is to trade with its neighbor Pakistan. And part of the reason is, of course, there are no agreements for crossing over the Wagah border, which is the easiest land border to cross. A very limited number of products, 137 products, are allowed to be traded between India and Pakistan through the land border. There are no transit agreements in the region. The border crossings are congested. There are cumbersome. Procedures are complex, and the lack of transportation infrastructure. So for all of these reasons, it actually becomes easier for South Asia to trade with distant countries than with itself. So this, as we said, this has restricted the economic promise of the region. And what is the promise? I'd like to spend a little bit of time on the promise, right? So what will happen? So you might ask, so what's so important? What's the big deal? Why are we talking about intra-regional trade? Well, the point is that intra-regional trade, because it is natural, what we call gravity, the force of economic gravity, countries should trade a lot more with each other. Prosperous regions in the world do trade a lot with each other, and the best examples are East Asia and Europe. They have prospered and grown through the decades through a lot of trading with neighboring countries. So what will happen, supposing there was indeed much deeper integration in South Asia? What would be the benefits? Some of the key benefits, for example, the two biggest giants, the two giants in the region, India, Pakistan, which don't have normal trade relations for many different reasons. But if there were to be normalized trade relations, which means tariffs would be cut to normal low levels, and there would be smooth in and out trade in goods. Current trade, which is less than $3 billion between the two countries, recorded formal trade, could easily increase to 20 billion, and it could be much more than that if we look at a more dynamic setting. So that will bring benefits to the people. Bangladesh's exports to India, this is a paper that I did with Probir Dey and Salim Rehan on India-Bangladesh trade. Bangladesh's exports to India could go up by 300%, right? So if there was to be a deeper trade agreement between India and Bangladesh and easier transport in and out of goods. It's also, deeper integration is critical for landlocked regions. There is Northeast India, which is almost like an isolated part of India. It considers itself landlocked, and it desperately needs better access to the rest of India, to the rest of the world, and Bangladesh is critical for that process. So landlocked countries typically have a big stake in regional integration because they need the neighboring countries or neighboring regions access to the sea, to access both ports as well as and to get better prices. So what would happen for landlocked regions is that, so for example, Nepal, Bhutan, Northwest Pakistan, Afghanistan, Northeast India, these are all what we would consider landlocked regions in the region, and they would benefit tremendously because of they would get better access to global markets and to each other as well. So, and that would reduce prices, enhance welfare. People, the common man would gain because there would be price reduction. For example, somebody in Mizoram in Northeast India would then perhaps be able to enjoy prices at the same level as a consumer in New Delhi or in Islamabad would be getting products. Now, in order to realize this vision, this dream, what are some of the most important things that the region would need to do, that South Asia would need to do? And I noticed that in the poll, which our colleagues put up, some of you emphasized in particular, there were a lot of emphasis on two things in particular, which was on investing in efficient connectivity and border crossings, and the other one was eliminating tariff and non-tariff barriers. And indeed, those are some of the things that we've actually listed as well in this infographic. So investing in efficient connectivity and border crossings, I've talked about that, and it's very critical. The costs of trade are so high that it actually deters countries from trading with each other. It makes trade less competitive. It makes trade with the rest of the world. So it's more competitive for South Asia to trade with East Asia, because a dominant element in competitiveness is trade costs. So if those are going to be high, then there's less incentive economically to trade with each other. So we have to invest in efficient connectivity, smooth border crossings, border transport infrastructure, and also broader multimodal infrastructure. So that's one. Then there is the issue of eliminating tariff and non-tariff barriers. The South Asia Free Trade Agreement has not yet really been fully operationalized in a true sense. There are still very, very high tariffs. A lot of countries have exceptions. So actually, it is not really a zero duty trade as a free trade agreement should be. So there is a lot of work to be done on reducing tariffs in the region. Similarly, non-tariff barriers, there are a lot of complaints. Every country complains against each other. So we have put forward some mechanisms, and we can talk more about that subsequently. But there are ways, and the rest of the world has done this. In Africa, for example, there are ways to reduce non-tariff barriers in a way that is a solution that is satisfies all parties. Private investment, that's another thing. Without foreign direct investment, you really cannot have global value chains or regional value chains, and so there's an inextricable link between investment and trade. And South Asia, actually, the intra-regional investment is even lower than trade. It's only 2% of total investment that comes into the region. So we really have to leverage private investment in order to boost trade. And finally, liberalizing services. There's a lot of potential in services, medical services, education services, logistics, banking, and so on, and there are a lot of restrictions in the region on investment in those, and really utilizing the full scope of all of those. Doing even some of these things will help South Asia get closer to the vision and really improving welfare for its people. So much for now. It's been great talking to all of you. I look forward to continuing to continue this conversation. Please come back to this page on a blog, in a subsequent blog that I will write. Please comment. Please come back to the World Bank South Asia Facebook page. We also have a One South Asia page on World Bank South Asia region, and you will find a lot more information on that. But I hope this is the first of several conversations, and I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. Hope to keep interacting with you both in this medium as well as through writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you.